The illegal employment of children is surging right now. Violations of child labor laws are occurring, at levels 90% higher than they were 3 years ago. So what's going on, and what does it mean, and what do those laws even say? There's 3 basic components of child labor laws in the United States. The first is an occupation restriction. If the job is too dangerous, children aren't allowed to do it. The second is an hours restriction. If children are under 16 and therefore subject to compulsory education laws, they can't work too long, too late, or at night. The third is an age restriction. Children under the age of 14 are not allowed to work, with the exceptions of babysitting, newspaper routes, child actors, and kids who are working for their family business, so long as their family business doesn't have them working in one of the restricted dangerous occupations. The violations we're seeing right now, it's across the board. We're seeing kids under 14, we're seeing them work night shifts and at places they are not allowed to be working until they are 18 years old. Some people would say that this is a function of the tight labor market. But I would argue there is nothing about our labor market or an unemployment rate below 4% that influences the use of child labor. Because to violate child labor laws and illegally employ children that are either too young or to put children in jobs that are too dangerous, it requires 2 things. 1, a willingness to break the law, and 2, the opportunity to do so. And I think that opportunity is what's changed the most. Because we don't have great enforcement. Labor laws, including child labor laws, are enforced by the Wage and Hour Administration within the Department of Labor. It's labor's cop, as you would say. They haven't had an administrator in 3 years. None of Biden's appointees have been approved by the Senate. So we don't have a chief enforcement officer at the Department of Labor to enforce these laws. And the division that is supposed to enforce it has been underfunded and understaffed for decades. With a dearth in investigators and a dearth of inspectors and no top cop, that's certainly an opportunity to violate child labor laws. I think the second is that the penalty for violating child labor laws doesn't really, present much of a prohibitive cost. It's $15,000 per kid with no additional sanctions on top of that. It's not like they shut you down if they find you employ children. They make you write a check. But probably the greatest change and the source of this opportunism is that unaccompanied minors have been surging at the U.S. border. These are children who show up without parents, who are admitted to the U.S. and typically placed with families they have inside the country, but their parents remain outside of it. These are the kids that are being found working by the dozens or hundreds in occupations in which no child in the U.S. should work. They're making cars for Hyundai in Alabama. They're cleaning meatpacking facilities for Packer Services in Minnesota. They're being put to work in sawmills in Wisconsin, where just this last summer, a 16-year-old was injured and died. That type of opportunism from taking advantage of immigrant children who don't have parents in the U.S., that has nothing to do with the unemployment rate being 4% or 40%. That is just a willingness to take advantage of children whose parents are not present.